I very much want to welcome you. I am Steve Parrish with the American College of Financial Services. Very much appreciate your signing on. And let me start by wishing you a happy new year. And what an exciting year it's become already. And what a great time to have a discussion about new approaches with consumer issues in retirement planning. So I just want to start right off at the beginning by letting you know who our guests are. And you can read about their bios and some of the other material we provided, but let me just kind of put the personal touch to it. I first came across Marcia Mantell when I was reading an article in Think Advisor, and she was talking about the interaction between IRMA and conversions of Roth. And I thought, A, she gets it, and B, she just explained it so well. So I kind of chased her down, ran into her in a meeting in Des Moines, Iowa, and asked her if she'd join us today, which I appreciate. So welcome, Marcia. I appreciate you doing this.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. And then the other one is also a Des Moines connection. I read in Investment News an article that talked about a Carson Wealth Group in Des Moines, Iowa that was doing this fascinating idea with an advisory group for pre-retirees to kind of help them understand through mentors what the retirement experience is like. Got a hold of Jason and met with he and his team. And he just has some great ideas to pass along. So Jason, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Pleasure to be here.
Let's kind of get going with the 800-pound gorilla, which in this case is a 300-page piece of law, and that is Secure Act 2.0. It actually happened at the end of the year, and so now we're dealing with it. And what I want to do is just give you a little bit of a feel for the way we're coming on. Now, one thing is be aware of, and I'll cover this near the end, is we actually have prepared a CE on this, including me interviewing Ed Slott for some of his ideas. But let's just talk about what it is generally, and I'm going to ask my guests for their thought as well. But basically, if you look at what Secure Act 2.2 did, is it doesn't cover all forms of retirement planning. So it doesn't touch Medicare, it doesn't touch Social Security. And it really doesn't get very much into non-qualified investments and things like that, some things on annuities. But what it really does is get at qualified plans and individual qualified plans like IRAs and Roths and those kind of things. So that's really the part of the house, if you want to call it a retirement income house, that it's dealing with. So I would just say that my top points from my own reading of this, from talking with Ed Slott and others, big picture is that you're going to have more qualified plans and more participants. I say that because they have a starter 401k, which is pretty interesting. Things like a Roth Simple, which they didn't have before. And it also means there's going to be more employee participation eventually. Things that are causing that are more exceptions to the 72T 10% penalty. Examples would be if there's domestic abuse, if you're in a situation where it's a federally declared disaster, those kind of things. Also, more employee participation because of auto-enrolling more people, having even firmer rules on permanent part-time coverage, that kind of thing. Also, you're going to have more of it. They've designed a lot of the qualified plans to be a little more savings oriented. So there is an emergency fund type of savings element that's still in the qualified plan. And there's actually, for low income employees, a government 50% match. So it's like, if you put 2,000 in, we match 1,000 type of thing. And then one of the things I'm excited about personally is a lifetime income emphasis. So we've moved away from defined benefit. We're in defined contribution, yet people want those guaranteed incomes. There's a lot of things they did to improve that. QLAC improvements, and then some specific things to annuities, ETFs, RILAs, that kind of stuff, and no bifurcation when you're splitting partial withdrawals. A lot of small things, but they all count up. And the bottom line is that the government hopes that through these liberalized procedures, because there's really no takeaways, it's mainly gives, that people will put more money away. That remains to be seen, but it certainly leads me to asking my esteemed panel here, what they think. So let me ask you, Marcia, first. I think you'd agree it's a big law with a bunch of small provisions, but it doesn't have any direct effect on one of your great areas of expertise, Social Security and Medicare. But what do you think? How do you think this law otherwise will affect retirement planning?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And you're right. It doesn't do anything to take the fear mongering and frightening of the older Americans, help them with Social Security to know that it is secure and to deal with Medicare. But it is interesting, and I totally agree with you. It's the land of 10,000 new picayune changes. And in aggregate, it's not bad, I guess.
Yeah.
I look at it though, for the advisor community and the professional community, it is just overwhelmingly technical and complex. But I do look at it in the good, the bad, and the ugly. So there is a lot of good stuff. You mentioned a lot of it. I love that in the Roth qualified retirement plans, now there'll be no required minimum distribution to that Roth component of your 401k or 403b. That's great. Yay for that. And I'm a small business person, so I'm particularly interested in the small business side of things. And I'm thrilled to see the Roth SEP and the Roth Simple. Those are excellent provisions, moving the idea that small businesses need to save more, maybe into the land of opportunity. Matching student loans, yep, IRA catch-up, finally. The extra catch-ups. The problem, even though it's good, the problem here is that it misses the point that most Americans don't have extra money to save, full stop, let alone save for retirement. So I'm hoping to see some good news bits coming out of this, but I think it's going to be long because it's going to be the sum of many, many parts. But there's still good stuff. The bad, though, and I'm just really hot on this. I strongly believe, because hopefully we will all retire. We're going to retire, or we're going to be, 6 feet under. Retirement is going to come. Don't touch the qualified retirement plans. And it was every time we had a natural disaster, Congress would open up 401ks so you can go and raid them to pay for the disaster. I get that it's a disaster, but I also get that most people don't replace that money. So the fact that they made it even easier to access plan money when we have, tornadoes, hurricanes, et cetera, that's just terrible in my view. These need to be lock boxes, and the emergency fund should be the answer to that, but that number is quite small. I also don't love the idea that the in-plan catch-ups need to be limited to the Roth IRA for the higher income folks. But then again, I'm not trying to balance the budget in Congress. So at least there's some, option for the Roth. And frankly, the ugly is more for those of you who are really in the thick of dealing with retirement distributions, more complex rules with the RMDs. That is not helpful. And there's just nothing simple about simple IRAs, and something that should be so easy for small business owners blew up in this law and in the omnibus bill. And there's even more to simple. So we just should call them hard IRAs. And regular people, no way, cannot figure this stuff out. So it's an opportunity for our industry, but it's still really technical and complex.
Yeah, that's a good summary for those of you listening. Think of this as the Retirement Planners Continued Employment Act of 2022. One thing before I get to you, Jason, I just wanted to mention that you can put questions in question and answer. And what I do is I will monitor these. And to the extent we have some time left, I will pass those on. We never get to all the questions, but please feel free to put those questions in there as we go in the Q&A function. So Jason, moving on to you, I assume that at least some of your clients are saying, what's this retirement law? Or maybe you're reaching out, but how do you see Secure 2.0 affecting your practice and your work with your clients?
Yeah, so to Marcia's point, very complex, very granular, a lot of nuances. We work with a unique subset of clients, kind of that affluent to high net worth folks, really 5 to 7 years pre-retirement. And we work with mostly delegators. So we're really bringing this to their attention to talk about different planning opportunities, such as the 529 to Roth conversion. A few nuances there, right? You have to have the plan for 15 years. You have to stick within the Roth contribution limits, up to 35,000. You know, the interesting part about the catch-up contribution increase to 10,000 from the age of 60 to 63. Not sure why they capped it at 63, but nonetheless, a planning opportunity. And then, you know, last but not least, RMDs rising from 72 to 73, eventually 75. You know, there's an interesting statistic that Jamie Hopkins put out there and informed me of. He's head of our advanced planning team here at Carson Group. And over 80% of retirement account holders take distributions prior to RMD age. So there's not a huge impact to those folks, but what it does help from our seat as an advisor is really helping avoid that tax torpedo. We're looking at decumulation. We're looking at utilizing our retirement income, RICP designation. You know, what accounts to withdraw from, in what order, and how do you create the most tax efficient strategy? So I think there's opportunity there.
Good, thank you very much. And one thing we did have is a question come up related to 2.0 is this whole idea of student loans. The idea is simply if you make a payment towards your student loan, that's the equivalent of saving some money. And so the employer can do an employer match based on that. So someone asked, I thought that's worth answering. Also, we are getting some questions about the some of the CE things. So Emily, if there's something you can post on that, that would help. The other thing, and the other question we're getting is, will there be slides available? Yes, those will be sent out after we're done. Okay, but let's move it a little beyond just 2.0 and talk about the environment for retirement planning in general. So we're dealing with this persistent inflation, and we're dealing with not exactly pleasant markets. We were kidding ourselves earlier about this, and not good market performance. So my question to you, Jason, just as a continuation of what you were talking about, is when you're talking with your clients, how are they looking at today's environment compared to, like, say, a year ago when you have retirement discussions with them?
Yeah, so, you know, the conversation hasn't changed that much. You know, we do really lean on the plan. You know, what are your goals? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? What are you trying to accomplish? And then you've got your various vehicles to help fund those goals. And so for us, we're really paying close attention to Roth conversions and really managing tax brackets, and really managing those IRMA brackets. That is an oftentimes overlooked area. Marcia, I know that's really a specialty of yours. We're going to get into that a little bit later today, but that is oftentimes overlooked. And so how do you create this income stream? And when we think of planning, we really look at it as a Rubik's Cube. So we love metaphors, we love analogies, and a Rubik's Cube, I don't know if you've ever completed one before, but they're extremely difficult. And you can try to color one side of the cube, and that's tough. And 2 sides is difficult, but 8 sides is extremely difficult. And so when you try to color coordinate one side versus another, it scrambles the opposite side, and that's your income stream. And when you think of Social Security, when you think of IRMA brackets, think of your tax brackets, think of your various retirement vehicles, IRA, Roth, taxable, pension, blend all these together. You really need to look through a global lens and make sure you're not scrambling one side versus the other.
Well, and I'll ask the same question to Marcia. I mean, when you talk to, and sometimes you're talking to these people right at the edge of going into Medicare or whatever, are they scared, not scared, ready to move, or frozen at this point because of what's going on?
It's interesting. There are a lot of competing negative factors out there, right? With inflation and a jittery market and a lot of headlines that, again, are written to strike the fear of God into all of us. So it's not unnoticed by both advisors and the near retirees. But what I'm seeing is a couple of things. The first is those are a secondary new perspective relative to COVID and the implications of the pandemic in terms of making these profound changes in the way real people are thinking about retirement. So people who have plans, they're just pieces of paper at this point. Unless, Jason, I love that, you all are so proactive with your clients, bring them back in, relook at the plan, what has changed, if anything. That's super important for the professional community to do more getting in front of this, because what's so fundamentally changed, particularly for baby boomers, they're retiring in an accelerated fashion. So they are taking action. They're not frozen. But since they hadn't planned maybe a year ago, even just as recent as a year to retire, and now they're either faced with layoffs or couldn't find a new job or nevertheless stopping their paycheck, they are shocked when it comes to Medicare. They've never heard of Irma. They just haven't met her, and they're none too happy about that. So again, it's for our industry to get ahead of what is coming down the pike for anyone who's certainly 60 and older. And then if you can push planning even further back or earlier ages, that would be really helpful for your clients to keep them focused and understand consequences of decisions. But I will say the boomers overall are willing to give up a little bit on lifestyle to quit working today.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. And by the way, we're getting a lot of questions on 2.0 and more than I can answer, like the rollover of 529 plans to Roth. That makes nuclear physics look easy, or at least I assume it does. I'm not expert in nuclear physics. It's complicated. But your comment, Marcia, fits real well into this thing I'm excited for Jason to talk about as a boomer and as somebody who's already hit those ages for Medicare and Social Security and all that. Is this great thing that you're doing at your office that I referred to, the board of advisors. Can you take a few minutes to talk about what it is you do and how you do it? I just think it's an exciting concept that a lot of the listeners would benefit from.
Yeah, so as you think about this retirement advisory committee, it's really a community of retirees helping one another transition from their working years to retirement. And this vision actually goes back about a decade or more, where our managing partner, Joel Worsfold, really identified this need and saw the movement of commoditizing financial advice, kind of the fee movement of fees getting driven down and down and down. And so how do we bring value? Well, we bring value by talking about more than just the investments. And so one of the value adds we have is this retirement advisory committee. And what Joel found and we've found is when you retire, you are taking a 180, not only from a financial standpoint, but really everything in your life is very different. You all of a sudden have 100% of the minutes, the hours, and the days in your life up to your discretion. And so how do you want to spend that time? And so, with those emotions, there's a lot to unpack there. And there's a positive, joy and celebration when a person retires, but there's also kind of a sense of loss. And, when you work for a company, work within a career, and you work your way up the ladder for decade upon decade, possibly 30 years, and you develop these very deep relationships at your work, and you've got conversations at the water cooler, and you've got this sense of community within your company, and now you retire. And you start to lose those relationships. You lose contact with some of those individuals. And so that creates some mourning, that creates some loss, that creates some grief. And how do we help those retirees deal with that grief? How do we help them find a new sense of purpose? Because when we work for an organization and we work our way up the ladder and we develop a title and a career that we work so ever dearly to achieve, we do have kind of a sense of just kind of association with that job and with that achievement. And so there are withdrawals when you no longer have those same goals and projects that you're accomplishing, and that sense of adrenaline you would get from those accomplishments that you have during your working years. And there are withdrawals. as I mentioned, I've not done drugs. I'm not familiar with how that feels, but I've heard it's pretty challenging to go through that. And so we want to make sure retirees don't feel as if they're on an island. They're not alone. And so this committee brings near retirees, recent retirees, and long-term retirees together in a community where they're able to have an open forum in a very large setting, where it can just be kind of retirees talking to 10-year veterans about what they're going through in that moment, whether it is the water cooler conversations that have dissipated, whether that is, possibly how they're going to fill their time, how they're going to find a new purpose, a new passion, and that ultimately they're not alone. And the sense of relief that everyone gets from these sessions is incredible. You can truly feel and see the weight get lifted off their shoulders. And as far as the process goes, the process is we find a number of mentees. We've done this on numerous occasions. A mentee is someone who is nearing retirement or just retired. Mentors, someone who is retired for a year, 5 years, 10 years or longer. And ultimately, we have a couple subsets. And those cohorts are made up of all mentees and mentors get together kind of on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis to have an open forum. But we also have individual breakout sessions. And those smaller breakout sessions allow one mentee to have conversation with 3 mentors. And it's a little bit more personal. Some folks like the more large group and function. Others are a little more introverted and want to have something a little more personal. And it's turned out incredible. The thing I would say that we oftentimes get asked, well, what kind of issues have come up? What have you seen? And the issues that we've seen just as of late, we've all been dealing with COVID. And specifically for those retirees that have just sunsetted during COVID, the vision of their retirement it's been edited because travel was impaired. And there's a new norm that has been created. And so they've had to adjust their original vision of what retirement would be. Another one is, we've got grandchildren. Many of them have grandchildren. Many of them have elderly parents. And so those grandchildren are incredible. And it gives these retirees an opportunity to spend time with their grandchildren. But we do have to create boundaries. And we don't want the grandparents to be solely relied on for care. Mm-hmm. And so it is important that retiree lays the groundwork of the expectations, because this is what they've worked their entire life for. We want to make sure they're able to live it the way that they dreamt.
Yeah. I just think it's a great concept. It's very practical. You can set that up in your practice. So thanks for sharing that with us. And Marcia, I'm going to turn to you. By the way, I'm getting some questions in the Q&A that what I try to do all the time is respond as much as I can later. So give me some time, because some of them we'll get today. A lot of them are, pretty big in scope. So Marcia, you're a go-to person on retirement planning, specifically in Medicare and Social Security. So besides the fact that we all know that anybody named Joe who was a former quarterback is where you go for your Medicare advice, but beyond that, maybe a little bit, what do you think some of the hot issues are, some of the things that retirement planners need to grapple with in the area of Social Security and Medicare as we face 2023?
And, I can't help but laugh when you reference those Medicare Advantage ads, and I'll come to those in just a second. Would you mind advancing the slide for me?
Yep.
And 2 more clicks. So what I want to share first with retirement planners that I think our role, one of our main roles in this industry, is to take the heat out of the headlines. There is so much noise. And even right now, we have this brand new Congress in session. And almost the first thing out was how this new Congress was going to destroy and cut Social Security and Medicare. All right, it's just not that. It's not possible. It's not going to happen. And we all need to have a basis of really good, robust primary resources at our fingertips. So I'm going to direct you first and foremost to my favorite document, which is the Social Security Trustees Report. I don't know, it's about 350 pages long. Just go to page 178, because I want to direct you to this particular page where you can combat your client's concerns about Social Security going bankrupt. It is not going bankrupt. When you hear that, you know that people just don't understand what this program even is and how social insurance works, and the fact that it's a great big law. There is a reserve account. So I look at this as a big checking account with an attached savings account. When we pay our payroll taxes, they go into the checking account, and Social Security turns around and it sends that money to my dad and all the other folks who are retired and claiming Social Security. That works fine. We have workers paying in and retirees getting paid out. But when there's a surplus, there's this little savings account, right? The rainy day fund. And it's called literally the reserve account. In this table, what you see here, and I know it's tiny, but there's a name here, which is the long range OASDI, Social Security, and Trust Fund Reserve, the reserve account depletion date. Since 1982, we had the 1983 amendment. So the last time the program went bankrupt was in 1982. Congress took action. That's how we got our new full retirement ages and a whole heap of changes. But it is from 1982 forward, we, meaning Americans, if you look at this report, and certainly Congress knows that this reserve account was not going to last through the boomers' retirement years. And you can see the projected dates from 2049 and 2051 all the way, to more current. In 1993, the projected date was 2036. Well, that's about the same date as we have now, 2034, for the projected depletion date. So what I'm sharing with you here is this is a facts and stats kind of situation. Help your clients understand the program is not going bankrupt. Help them understand that they need to make good decisions. Don't just grab and go because you think it's going to go away. And know that we've known this forever. It's not news and it's not new. So now, Steve, to the next slide, please.
Okay.
Medicare. Medicare is just a mess. It's just a heap of a mess is all I can say in a nice way. But each of your client, whether it's a mess or not, each client is going to need to navigate this situation. And Medicare is not one thing. It's not like with your employer health plan and you pick a box. I'm going to pick a high deductible health plan, or I'm going to pick the non-high deductible health plan. Check a box, get it in before the end of the year, and my plan is in place. With Medicare, each individual client, no longer couples and spouses and kids and all of that jazz, Medicare's individual. They have to decide, are they going to buy the quartet, as I call it, on the left, or the trio on the right? Everybody has to have A and B before they can do anything else. So you sign up for A and B at the appropriate times. Then you decide, do you want maximum flexibility for insurance coverage? That's the quartet. You buy a separate Medigap supplemental insurance policy, and you buy Part D for your prescription drug coverage. So that's an option. Or the other option is the Medicare Advantage plan with the prescription drugs already wrapped together. But when you watch the commercials during what's called the open enrollment period, Q4, it's insane. It is every old actor and every old quarterback pitching that you simply must have this particular Medicare Advantage plan because by golly, it's free. Well, it's not free. It's that there's no additional premium in addition to your Part B premium that you're already paying. So it's gotten to this heightened frenzy from the health insurance companies, the private insurers, who, by the way, they all sell Medigap policies as well. So you're going to be in there, if you're buying Blue Cross or Tufts or Humana or Kaiser, whomever, they sell both sides of the quartet or the trio. And it's just so much confusion, so much noise, so much obnoxiousness, that it's disturbing at best and disgusting at worst. So your clients all have to navigate this, and you can help them get ahead of this. Because Steve, if you go to the next slide for me, what they're really faced with is they don't decide about A and B. You have to have those, and it's just the timing of when that works. But they do have to decide how to pay for their share of this cost sharing program. You can self-pay, that's not really an option, Medigap or Medicare Advantage. And to go through the options, to see what's available in their zip codes, to try to decide what's most important for them, it takes a really long time. It's incredibly frustrating, and they need more time than we typically give them, which is 3 months before their 65th birthday month. So Jason, kind of to what you're doing, you're bringing all this to the party way before clients need it. And that's what I would suggest as well, that, all of us in the retirement planning space do. Age 60 is a good age to start talking about Medicare and what's coming, and allows your clients to start to noodle around with the tools on Medicare.gov. How much is this really going to cost? And oh my God, it's a budget buster.
Yeah, and Budget Buster, we had somebody asking about the cost of it, and we don't even want to go into the cost of it because the revenue coming isn't necessarily paying for it. You're paying for some of it. You deal with what you got. But let me ask you a follow-up question, because it's related to this, Marcia. You've done a lot of writing about retirement planning issues specific to women. I mean, there's all kinds of issues going on, but including longevity. Could you pass on your thoughts about the importance of ownership in retirement for women?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. That's my other passion. If I'm not screaming from the rooftops that Social Security is not going bankrupt and get into Medicare, understand it before you get into it, I am helping women, particularly boomer women at this point, get in the game, get into the money game and own your money. Now, I'm very hot on things like at-home moms didn't have the opportunity to save in any meaningful way for their retirement until 1996. I was 35 years old. I had 2 kids already. And if I had been an at-home mom, I could not have saved for retirement. That's egregious. The older boomers, they were 50. These moms raised their kids at home and they did all this great stuff and they couldn't save for retirement. So having an IRA, I think, is the single most important thing you can do for your women clients. Doesn't matter if it's tax deductible or not. Doesn't matter if it's Roth or traditional. This is ownership. And women aren't in the game because so often they couldn't own anything. So let's change that. I'm looking to change the conversation for women, which really means helping them know what to even talk about. So I do write specifically to women about Social Security. Medicare will hopefully come out this year, just planning in general for retirement, because women don't have language that those of us in the industry have, and they don't know where to start. And they really need to start by giving themselves some credit that they know more than they think. It's just in different terms. So Jason, I love that you do the Rubik's Cube. You can immediately envision that, right? Trying to twist and turn and get the right colors. I'll never be able to do that thing. I use my analogies are about cooking. Whether you are an actual chef on Food Network, or you're like all the rest of us moms, you spend most of your days in the kitchen, even when you're a working mother, an outside the home working mother. So I look at it as a recipe, and preparing for and making this transition into retirement is just a series of recipes and menu planning. And so if we can help women just be comfortable with what they already know and the skills they have, then we can translate it to the financial side of things. But again, if they can't own anything, it's a problem. They don't own their husband's 401ks or their wives' 401ks. It's single individual ownership, but it's meant for 2. We need to help women move there in a way they can understand. And when they're just nodding at you in a meeting, they're not following you. Don't be fooled by the nod.
Yeah, great point. So true. And I'll have a follow-up with that. But first, I want to go to Jason, because if you like the Rubik's Cube analogy, he has an even better one here. So, this is a lot for a retirement planner to deal with. We're talking about, like, people I've been asking, what is IRMA? And I tried to write an explanation of that. And you've got all the different things going on with Medicare, Secure Act, and all that. You have some interesting observations, Jason, about theory versus practice in retirement planning. So can you share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pivot just a little bit for a moment. We had a recent interaction with a prospect, and ultimately they had said their situation is simple. And the reality is, we appreciate the fact that their situation is simple, but the world is very complicated, specifically the financial world. And so, regardless of how difficult a person thinks their situation is, that Rubik's Cube is still relevant. And, when we think about everything we've discussed up until this point today, I remember sitting in this audience many times and thinking about, okay, these ideas, these theories are great, but how am I going to put this to practice? I am buried in clients' meetings. How do I actually put rubber to the road and start to build on some of these concepts? And, at my previous firm, just a few years ago, I had 800 clients. And the reality was, with that number of clients, I could not implement any of these theories. I couldn't implement retirement advisory committee. I couldn't implement managing IRMA brackets, managing tax brackets, distribution strategies. You've got all these strategies, and you only have so many hours in the day. And so one of the things that I've learned being here through my mentor, Joel Worsfold, and then Ron Carson, is just, we really want to dive deep. And when we think about metaphors, typically speaking, most advisors focus on the investments. And if we think about this in the form of an iceberg, what you see above the water level, that's investments. And that's what clients think of us as. Financial advisors handle investments. The challenge with investments, and that being the focus, is it is being commoditized. And that's when we see fees get driven down, and it's always a race to the bottom, and clients are really looking for the lowest cost option available. And there are a lot of places out there that can do a decent job at investments for a pretty inexpensive cost. So in our minds, with our clientele, what we bring value, where we deliver value, is below the water level, what you can't see, what you might not be able to quantitate on a performance report, but we can quantitate it through a tax return and other means and methods. And that's going to be, tax loss harvesting. There has been a number of opportunities here over the last 3 years to really, take advantage of those taxable accounts and be very strategic about tax loss harvesting. Also, the tax bracket management. What is the optimal Roth conversion? What amount of an account should you convert? How does that influence their marginal bracket, their effective bracket? But then being very conscious, are they Medicare age, and what's the IRMA influence? Overlooked how many times? Extremely detrimental. You think about those ad hoc distributions. A client calls in and they're going to purchase a vehicle, or they need to replace a water heater. They need to replace the roof on their house, and they take a distribution. Well, as their advisor, if we're not conscientious about the tax consequences of that distribution and the funding of that purchase, it could cause them higher IRMA premiums, higher taxes, and some lasting effects. So we really need to dive deep and have a coordinated effort across our clients' entire financial picture. Part of that picture, I know I've mentioned taxes. We don't do taxes for our clients. I'm not a CPA, so I can't give the tax advice, but we do have advanced planning and a team of people to help us through those details that are CPAs on our team, and our clients have access to our advanced planning group as our clients. It's just a part of the service we provide. But in the event we are looking to, at the end of the year, finally file taxes, we'll coordinate with that client's existing CPA, with their existing account, to really firm up a few of the details and get that professional stamp of approval. Same thing goes with the estate planning piece. I think Jamie Hopkins says, everybody has a plan. Some plans are better than others. And that's true. But evaluating those estate plans and how effective is that plan and is it optimal? And that's the thing when we think about retirement, distributions, income. There are a lot of effective ways to generate income. What is the optimal method for you and your situation? The only way you can do that, and I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but you have to limit the number of clients you work with. And that's the only way you can implement many of these theories. And so through a concerted effort and the opportunity for me to come and join Joel and Carson, we've been able to do this and execute to an extreme degree.
That's great metaphor. I told Jason, just figure I've already stolen his metaphor. I love it, of the iceberg. And related to that, so much of this is how do we deal with it? We have a question in the Q&A box about, well, if you're still working, should you take your employer plan instead of Medicare? And believe me, I'm not going to answer this, Marcia, but I guess it does lead to the question of how does an advisor, they have to earn a right at the retirement planning table by knowing something about Social Security and Medicare, but I don't think any of us know it all. So what are the choices for an advisor to be a resource on Medicare and Social Security?
I think that's the exactly right question. What are the choices? And there are only three. The one we tend to do is ignore it. I don't really see that as a choice. We hope it goes away, but it doesn't. So your choices are twofold. One is you do a deep dive and become a Medicare expert. And you can. I've been working at Medicare for 10 years, and I will tell you every single day, I learn new things, and there's just no way to know everything there is. And it's completely custom by client. So you have to know, you have general rules, you have specific rules, and then you have the client. So how many prescriptions are they taking? Are they designer drugs, or are they just a generic something? What options are available in their zip code and county? Are they here all the time in your place, Des Moines, or are they winter in Florida? Every single thing comes into play. So you either have to be the expert in this area, and that's where you'll spend most of your time, or you bring in a partner. Now, in my case, I do retirement Medicare consulting with an advisor and their client. Some advisors just send their clients to me, and I don't do the top of the iceberg, to give you the analogy, Jason. I'm not an investment person, but I can help with Medicare and Social Security. So that's an opportunity for you. Or you may know a broker, and you can go the broker route. In that case, your client doesn't have to pay anything up front, but the expectation is they will buy their Medicare Advantage plan or their Medigap and Part D from that broker. So it's not, you can't just go for education to somebody. The expectation is there is a sale involved. In my case, I charge an hourly fee. So those are your options.
Yeah. And just for those of you that are younger planners that are really dealing with the upper part of the iceberg and saying, well, I'm going to move into retirement planning, please understand, I've gone through 4 years of this. Every November, people on, I'm not a retiree, but people on Medicare have to go through this very painful process. And Marcia, it is painful, as you well know. I mean, you have to chase down what drugs there are and where prescriptions are filled and all kinds of things. So, but that's what earns you the place at the table. So let me ask for both of you. It's a new year, so we've been talking about new ways of dealing with retirement planning. Just thought I'd see what was on your plates as far as what you are interested in, what you're looking at for this year, in terms of what do you want to know or what are you going to do next in retirement planning? I'll start with you, Jason.
For our firm, we're really trying to help clients paint their retirement picture brushstroke by brushstroke. And what I mean by that is really envision what their retirement is going to look like. Truly look in the mirror and start to envision what that next step will be, what the next chapter is, what the next book in the series is. And a lot of times retirees think of retirement as the finish line, but it really is the next chapter. And so it's time where you're able to take all the blood, sweat, and tears and money that you've amassed and the wealth that you've generated, and what's the purpose for that wealth, and really use that wealth as fuel. And it truly takes a vision to be able to do that. I think the biggest challenge with most clients is those who've amassed a large net worth. They were able to do that through fiscal responsibility. They're typically much more frugal. And so the challenge for those folks is getting them to understand that it's okay to spend a few dollars, and really helping them envision what they would spend the money on. Maybe it's vacations with their entire family. Maybe it's philanthropy. The list goes on, but really trying to dial in those goals and connect your mind with your wealth.
Marcia, what's new?
Yeah, I love where you're going, Jason. And those goals are so very important to give permission. And I think that's part of what our industry needs to do a little bit more. Where I'm focused is on the RMD maze. So there are now so many times when you can take required minimums, and no one knows, seems except, a few people, what end is up. So we can tap at 70 and a half, but some of your clients are at 72 and they already started. And then now we've got some new at 73. My cohort is at 75. Well, oh my gosh, the level of detail and niggly stuff. So I'm going to get my arms around that a little bit more and then translate it into English. Those are the kinds of things I tend to blog about. So I'll be focused on that. It'll probably take me all freaking year to figure it all out. I have the new cookbook, the Cooking Up Your Retirement Plan. I'm looking to, get that out and distribute it a little bit more, really along exactly what you're saying, Jason, is for individuals, and particularly for advisors who are trying to help their clients. I'm hoping this becomes a tool for you that you can, encourage your clients to go through this exercise, and they lay out in big, broad terms. What do the next 10 years look like? How many more years are you going to work? Great, that's plan A. Now plan C is, now you get fired at the end of the month. Now what? Do you think you're going to have another job? Are you going to just retire early then? What's that do to your equation? And plan B in the middle is something good happens. Either, your great uncle dies and you get this big inheritance, or, somehow you win the lottery. And the last thing that I'm really focused on overall in the writings and in the presentations that I do is helping to change the conversation. We have got to get underneath everything that's not being said. So back to those Medicare Advantage commercials, that ridiculousness. What people hear is what's presented. What we need to do is go and take a look and say, yeah, but what are the 99 things not being said in that ad? Or things like you can get a discount with Medicare Advantage and Medigap plans in particular. You get 30% discount when you pick this plan. No, you can't. You get it the first year. In the second year, you get a 20% discount. In the third year, you get a 10% discount. After that, you're paying the prevailing rate. So we're all getting, schnookered with these ads and with the positioning. So read the footnote, change the conversation.
That's excellent. Well, good. And we have some time for questions. This works out just the way I was hoping. One thing I wanted to mention is we had several questions on Social Security. You talked about some of the issues, particularly the women. I did want to mention a resource at the American College. First of all, we've done some studies and published them on how valuable it is to defer Social Security, particularly for women, because of the extra longevity. Also, Dr. Pfau, who's often on these webcasts, he and I wrote a paper that was just published this month in the Journal of Financial Planning. And I'll just give you the short version. The short version is I keep hearing people on the top part of the iceberg saying, well, what we're going to do is elect Social Security early because the government's not good for it anyway. And we're going to invest it and get, big money. So what we did, and Wade would kill me for putting it in these terms, but we basically ran it through Monte Carlo simulations saying 62 versus 70, assuming some kind of a Monte Carlo historical return, which does better, and then put it on a scattergram. And I'm here to tell you, deferring still makes sense. We did it at $1 million of net worth. We did it at $3 million of net worth. It makes a huge difference whether it's a 55 or 50-50 allocation between fixed and equity, or 75-25. But the point is, we've mathematically, using Monte Carlo, still it looks best to defer. As I look at the questions, one is I'll kind of answer and then give you a chance, Marcia, only so you don't feel like there's a conflict of interest, because several people are saying, how can I get a hold of Marcia? A few of you, or one of you, referenced the SHIP offices in the States, and that is a wonderful resource. It's great to have. What these are typically is volunteers who help on some of these Medicare decisions. However, and I can say this because they're making a difference how I get paid, they don't always have the ability to answer the really tough, sophisticated questions. With some of your clients, you will run into situations that's overwhelming for the SHIP office. Anything to add to that, Marcia?
Yes, I'm actually a huge fan of the SHIP organization, and SHIP is State Health Insurance Assistance Programs. We call them SHIP reps, but it sounds like shipwreck, but representatives. And it is a wonderful organization. Every state is required to have a group of volunteers, plus usually a couple of paid positions in your state government that help seniors. What they're especially good at is helping low-income seniors navigate through all the 80 million options to get their Medicare bills and their drug costs down. And they're really good at that. They don't tend to be our clients. So what I deal with, and the reason, and I always put them in their link in all my presentations too, because you should know that there is a free resource out there. But you're right, Steve, they can't always answer the questions that your clients are asking. And what I find is I get all the whys. Why is there IRMA? And IRMA, by the way, is income related monthly adjustment amount. This is the additional amount high income retirees pay for their Part B. And it's high. It gets up to almost to it's about $575 per person per month, just for Part B, if you're in the highest, the tier 6. So clients need to know about this and be prepared for it, but they're livid. No one can explain this. So I've been digging. It is very logical once you can explain it. And clients are still mad that they have to pay that much, but now they know you won't get that from the SHIP organization. That's not what they do.
No, that's not their thing.
No.
Now I got a good one, Jason. I'll just read it the way. This is a good question. Are not solutions to the management of withdrawals in down markets and sequence of return risk, aren't they more important than things like issues related to Secure Act 2.0? I think that's a great question. Meaning we get so focused on new law came out. What's important to them?
Yeah, is that a statement or a question? I think I would agree with. Yeah,
it's a statement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in other words, I guess what I'm getting at is we're talking a lot about Secure 2.0. Really, that law is focused more on pre-retirees, and I mean several years before, that are building up things like sequence of return and withdrawals and inflation are, that's more for the people who are just about to retire or retired. Unless you have anything to add on that. And this is one of those questions that's always hard to ask, but Marcia, more and more people are putting off retirement. So general thoughts with the limited time we have as far as should you keep your employer plan or switch over to Medicare at 65?
Yeah, it's 100% custom, but if you're working for a very large employer, it typically works out more cost effectively for you to stay in that big employer's plan. It is a little less expensive, though not cheap, and you do have to do the comparison. It also impacts your beneficiaries. So is your spouse on the plan with you? Do you have kids under 26 still on the plan with you? In that case, you should likely stay in the big employer's plan. But I will say avoid COBRA. If you're the over 65 person whose employer said, oh, well, you can get COBRA for 18 months and then join Medicare. No, you can't. So stay away from that.
Good, thanks. Other questions have come up about Secure 2.0, and I guess I'll just, in fact, maybe I should just go on and point this out and see if anybody else has anything to add. But what we're doing, when we're in the question period, but we will, at the American College, we have a CE that's going to come out shortly. It says coming soon, where we're going to address some of the questions that are all over the Q&A. For example, yes, you can roll over a 529 plan to a Roth IRA, but whoa, are the provisions complex? I mean, really complex. Another one is, when does the age 75 for RMDs hit? It didn't even hit for 10 years, 2033. The effective dates for the simple IRA or the Roth simple, you know what? I don't even know, but I have that in our materials. So just be aware, a lot of those kind of questions are coming along. Let's see, I'm just looking to see other. Well, I guess we can ask this with, I'll have to ask for a short answer, but a little bit, Jason, how do you get paid? Because they're looking at the kind of things you're doing and saying, you know, wow, that's pretty cool stuff, but how do you get paid for it?
Yeah, fee only. Yeah, so AUM, assets under management. You know, and when you think about this particular scenario, you do deliver significant value. And the question we will get asked oftentimes is, you know, well, I'm only charged, my advisor is only charging X and you're charging Y. And so really the question that follows is, what are you getting for what you're paying? Mm-hmm. And when you think about investments, it really is table stakes. And if we can save on taxes through really strategic management and decumulation, it really moves the needle. And having the right financial planning software allows you to demonstrate that, monetize it, to say, okay, here's our decumulation, here's conventional decumulation, here's proportional decumulation, here's dynamic decumulation, here's dynamic time sensitive, which is what we do, and you move the needle very quickly. I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes. And then once you look at the influence to the portfolio value, oftentimes you're talking, you know, 800 to $1 million. And then when you evaluate the legacy, the reduction in taxes to their heirs, plus the additional portfolio balances to their heirs, net of taxes, it's significant.
That's an excellent place to finish. But look forward to more information about the CE. And at this point, I always like to finish at the top of the hour. So again, thank you very much, Marcia. Thank you very much, Jason, and particularly Happy New Year to the audience attending. And we'll let you know about next quarters. Thanks much.